Hey folks, this is Rhykker, and I'd like to thank you all for joining us for a very special presentation right now. Joining us today are three individuals that are largely responsible for each and every single one of us being here today. Yeah. So for the benefit of the three of you who don't know who these individuals are, we'll let them introduce themselves.
Hi, I'm David Brevik.
Max Schaefer.
And Erich Schaefer.
We're brothers.
So we have with us the founders of Blizzard North, the creators of Diablo, and the action RPG genre as we know it. We're going to have a little conversation today, some Q&A. If you folks have questions, we encourage you to send those in. I'll be able to look through them, filter them. But in the meantime, we'll just get chatting. And one thing that I'd like to know from you three, over the past 2 decades of action RPGs, what do you feel have been some of the greatest innovations that you've seen?
Wow, that's a tough one.
Yeah, you know, every game comes with its own special flavor and its own innovations. And I think that's why we're still talking about it 20 years later. You know, there's the things that they all kind of share, which makes us all comfortable playing with them, but every one has its own unique thing. You know, right when we started was at the beginning of the internet gaming era, as we now know it, where you just click on and you're playing with everyone in the world. And you know, I think we're still figuring out the best way to make it a social experience and to play with each other. And so, yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure there's a lot of innovations I'm forgetting, but I almost think the genre is more about iteration. And it's just like, you could definitely see it with PoE here. So, you know, take the basis and just iterate and build and create really cool stuff. So there probably are innovations I'm completely forgetting, but that's not how I kind of think of it in general.
All right, now let's take a look into the future. Crystal ball, in 20 years from now, what do you think the action RPG genre is going to look like?
Wow. Well, there's so many places you can take it at this point. You know, I think we're just scratching the surface of the genre still. There's, you know, competitive modes that I think can be integrated into the experience without really fundamentally changing it. I still think that every time I play an aRPG, I want to know who would win in a fight between me and another guy. But, you know, I think fundamentally what makes an aRPG is, you know, sort of the camera view and the controls and the things that kind of that are common between all of them. And so I would hope that that's kind of still there. It's what distinguishes us from the rest of the video game world. So, you know, obviously 20 years from now, we'll have lots better graphics, better sound. You know, who knows what will be. We joke about in the future there'll be, you won't have a mouse and keyboard, it'll be some sort of gel ball that will be too old to know how to do anything with it. But we'll see.
Yeah, I don't know if it's going to go that way, but I think, I kind of think in terms of more sandboxy, more survival-y, that's what I think in terms when I think what my next aRPG will kind of look like. I would discount like VR and augmented reality and stuff like that. I think people like to play these games much like we're seeing now. Am I cutting in and out?
Yeah, you got a mic thing.
A little bit.
I'll keep my head straight for it.
I kind of agree with Eric. I mean, 20 years is a long time. So like a lot can happen in 20 years. It's hard to even know. But I think that with the last aRPG I made, it was called Marvel Heroes, and I thought that the steps that we took with that game were kind of the way that I see the action RPG genre going, which is more of a collaborative effort, being able to be in zones with other people that aren't necessarily in your party or anything like that, and joining up and working together kind of dynamically, and then going your separate ways, and as well as doing bigger events like bosses that require raid style things, and that kind of direction I think is kind of a hybrid between MMO and aRPG, is the way that I would like to see it go in the future. And maybe it will, maybe it won't. I did try it with Marvel Heroes, and it's a shame that we can't play that anymore.
Well, I'm glad you brought up Marvel Heroes, and we have Torchlight Frontiers now also going the more MMO route, and I believe your initial vision of Diablo 3 was a little more MMO. Yeah. Do you all feel strongly that MMO elements is the future of the genre?
Well, the MMO elements really are about a way for people to get together and feel like you're in a place. Like that's the MMO part that I want. I want to be running around and see people in outrageous gear going meet new friends and group up together and that kind of stuff, and having a more social experience I think is makes the game fun in a lot of ways. And I like to play with other people and play and build relationships with people, and so that's what I want more of, and an easier way to do those things when I'm playing.
And in fact, that was sort of the vision even with Diablo 2, is we wanted to get rid of the Battle.net chat and instead have what we called Battle.net Town, where it would be closer to the games that these guys have made since, and everybody does now. So that was the vision even from early on.
Yeah, we I think a shared town is kind of a default these days. That was certainly what we wanted to do back then. It's what we're doing in Torchlight Frontiers. And we're also playing with really innovating on player housing right now, and giving you kind of a solid stake in the world that you're in. You're not just it's not just a place where you walk around and hit monsters, but it's kind of, you can put down roots and build a home there, because really we're making these games where you live in these games for as long as you play them, and you may as well make a house and live in them,
Back when you were conceiving of Diablo 1, did you have any idea that you were creating something that would go on to have such a ripple effect throughout the gaming industry?
No.
However, there was a very strong feeling that we were hitting a technological point in the gaming world where we could bring some of the things that we really enjoyed from text-based and very rudimentary game experiences and bring them to life. And we knew that that was going to be a thing. Like, we felt like that was kind of an urgent need, and we really wanted to play it, and so we made it. And I think we knew that was going to be something, but that it would lead to something like this was completely not something we thought about.
Yeah, well, when we first designed Diablo, it was turn-based, right? So it turned out very differently than we intended. And when we first were pitching the game and talking to people and whatnot, our dream was, hey, maybe if it sold, could you imagine if it sold 20,000 copies? We might actually be able to make a second one. And so, that was the dream, just 20,000 copies and everything will be great. And it did a little better than that.
Yeah. But I remember the first time that we got a skeleton on screen where you walked over and clicked on him and you hit him and he fell over. It was like, oh, okay, this is going to be something. Yeah. We're onto something here.
Burning question from the crowd. What was the inspiration for the cow level?
Well, the cow level was a rumor in Diablo 1. There was this is early days of the internet, so information and disinformation, well, I guess it's no different today. Anyway, there was a rumor that if you clicked on the cow back by the witch, that and it was I don't know, something ridiculous, 10,000 times or something like that. Then a secret level to the cow level would appear. And so poor people would go and click on the cow a zillion times to try and find it. Oh, you probably lost track of how many times you clicked on it, and it wasn't really a thing. So then when we were making Diablo 2, we said, well, we're going to really put a cow level in now. So that's where it came from.
If we knew how popular we would have made more than just the one cow with halberd.
Yeah.
Casters and all kinds of cows.
Yeah. Champion cows, the whole bit, yeah.
So David, I believe you've been quoted as calling Path of Exile Diablo 2.5. As a question to all of you, what are your thoughts of Path of Exile today?
Well, I think it deserves more than 2.5 at this point. Yeah, I mean, it's, especially with some of the things we saw with the new PO2 announcement, I think I was blown away. That was really amazing. So I think that it definitely is a spiritual successor to Diablo 2 for sure, and you can tell not just from the way that they do things, the graphics, the atmosphere, as well as the way that Chris and everybody treats us. It's amazing that they constantly talk about how much of an influence Diablo 2 especially was on their design.
Yeah, for sure. It was the first game after Diablo 2 that we were like, okay, they get it. They're doing it genuinely. They're not making a product to make money. They're really like taking off with that gothic, dark, grim look, and doing it well. And so totally is the spiritual successor.
Yeah, I like to think, I was really jealous watching the keynote yesterday, but I like to think, I imagined myself working on the game when I was watching that, and I kind of feel like, oh, I wish I was working, and it kind of feels like naturally very similar to the direction we probably would have gone. I really think it's a true successor. Yeah. Really happy with it.
Yeah. And I'll point out that we have not been asked to sit and do this at a BlizzCon. And so here we are, right?
So I know a lot of us have a shared history with Dungeons & Dragons or tabletop games. Do you feel that there are certain elements from those types of games that could be brought more into the action RPG genre to improve it?
Yeah, I think what I took from, I was a big Dungeons & Dragons guy, but I loved the Monty Hall campaign. I just wanted my players to find cool new items and loot. So that's why that pushed the Diablo in that direction. It's a loot finding game, just like I played Dungeons & Dragons. So no, I wasn't more sophisticated than that, and I'm still not. So, David, on the other hand, runs Dungeons & Dragons games now that are a lot of fun, by the way.
Thanks.
Yeah, I think one of our when we were making the first Diablo, the RPG genre at the time was pretty story heavy, and you'd make your characters for a long time, and you got into the story quite a bit. But what we wanted to do was get to the hitting the skeleton with a stick early. Like we can layer in the story, we can do all that, we can get you immersed, but the thing that'll get you right into it is hitting the skeleton and finding a better sword. Like that just mentally prepares you for this world better than any amount of wall of text could possibly do.
Absolutely. I think that Dungeons & Dragons is still a big influence on me. I don't know if there's something specific that I can think of that pulls from it. It's still, oftentimes when I design any kind of game, any kind of role-playing game, I always go back to Dungeons & Dragons. I used a lot of the character classes that are kind of standard there, and we were talking about how the magic item system, in old Dungeons & Dragons, you could roll random items, create them kind of on the fly, and that was definitely an influence in the way that we created the random items, and so I think that we all grew up playing Dungeons & Dragons, and well, I don't know, am I grown up yet? I'm not quite sure, because I still play, so anyway, it's still a big influence.
Well, and for me, like, whenever you start a Dungeons & Dragons campaign, as a player, you're usually the DM, so you know what's going to happen. But as a player, it's like you just have that sense that anything could happen around the next corner. And I think that's what we try to get into these games is that, that sense that something great is going to be around the next corner, and it just keeps you going, it keeps you playing, and it makes it so you look up and it's 3 a.m. And that's totally what we wanted to bring from Dungeons and Dragons into this. Yeah.
Looking at other action RPGs over the years, have you found any mechanics that you saw and thought, oh damn, I wish I'd thought of that?
I'm probably different than these two guys in almost every. I don't play other action RPGs almost specifically to avoid that kind of thing. I'm too easily influenced, and I look at them way too critically and jealously, and so I have a hard time. I deliberately avoid similar games just so I can just create my own stuff. Because I have stolen a lot of ideas or been influenced by a lot of ideas. But because it just
inspired by, we say.
It just happens too easy for me, so I keep away from it, honestly.
Yeah, I think if you're going to make a unique game, you really got to immerse yourself in what you're doing and kind of not look around just for that reason.
Sorry, I thought I heard somebody asking something. So I think that there have been games that I've been inspired from, but oftentimes they aren't action aRPGs. Instead, I will take ideas and concepts from other games and other genres and kind of mix them in. It doesn't necessarily have to be from an aRPG. So other games that I enjoy, I'll try and say, well, how could this fit into an aRPG? What would that mean? And I mean, EverQuest was a huge influence on Marvel Heroes and things like that. So I think I used not just the aRPG genre when I'm designing.
Yeah, even like Minecraft. I got a lot of inspiration just from playing that, and just the way the world is and how expansive it is, and so yeah, there's inspiration to be taken everywhere.
I think a really cool example is David cooked up the idea of the skill trees from playing, I think it was the Civilization games. Yep. We were playing Civ 1 or Civ 2, where it was sort of a tech tree that you would step through. And one morning, I pretty much still remember it, he came in and said, hey, we could do a skill tree like the tech tree.
A skill tree.
And it didn't make, like a lot of Dave's ideas, it doesn't make sense at first. When I first hear it, I think, what are you talking about? We're trying to finish a game here. But it ended up being brilliant.
Yeah.
Speaking of skill trees, what are your individual thoughts on respecking?
I hate respec.
Yeah, I do too. Yes.
We all do.
Yeah.
But to some degree, we've built it into all our games because of the outcry. And
we always lose the argument, but we have it every time. And no, I like the idea that you are making choices that matter. I like the idea that my character is completely different than everyone else's, and that my experience through the game was my experience through the game. And I really hate the idea that the best way to play the game is to go on the internet and find the best pattern that you do to succeed. And then everyone, with respec, you can just make your character into that at any time. I really like to think of, especially in aRPGs, that you are the hero, and it is your story. There's lore and there's all kinds of things going around you, but you are the story, and your journey through it should be yours individually, and it should be unique, and it should be different than everyone else's, and it should be not optimal. For me, I've had the most fun making weird builds.
Yeah, we didn't achieve it always, but I always like the idea is you created this, you crafted this character, it became yours at the end, and it wasn't necessarily balanced with everybody else's. Now that's what a lot of people get really mad at. It's like, well, I made these choices and you screwed me. And now I'm not doing as much DPS as the other guy, which we always hoped, or I always hoped that, yeah, you're not. You're still able to complete the game, and you did it with your unique guy. As opposed to, a lot of times respec just makes it too easy. Everybody ends up the same, or else they're blowing it, Yeah. So I've always been against hardcore balance where everybody's the same. I want everything to be different, good or bad.
We always end up compromising with some sort of halfway measure.
Yeah, I had to put respec in my latest game because
he's the only person working on the game. You lost the argument to yourself.
I lost. I did. I stood my. But then, I made it difficult. Like, it's very difficult to get the ability to respec at least, but then you can. You have the opportunity. So I think that's a fair compromise.
So speaking of compromises, the gaming landscape has evolved tremendously since the 90s. It's opened up to a lot more players who, let's say casual, but we don't mean that in a derogatory sense, just people that weren't historically gamers, but they're getting into it and they don't have as much time to play. At what point, how do you decide where and when to compromise and when not to without losing the essence of what makes the game fun for the more hardcore audience?
That's a great question.
I think that a lot of times, this is going to sound maybe kind of a jerkish answer, but I make the game for myself. So if it's something that I'm excited about and I'm going to play and I can see myself playing many, many, many hours, that's the game. Like, I'm making it because I want to play it, right? And so I don't really think about, hey, how is this going to play with, a more casual audience or more hardcore audience. I mean, I consider myself a pretty hardcore gamer, even though I don't get as much time, well, mainly because I'm making games. But I think that I do play a lot. And so I think that for me, it's about that balance of making something deep and meaningful and interesting and with lots of decisions and chance and randomness and things like that create a different kind of experience for you. But then also making sure that the UI and the path and all of that is clear, which kind of blends the two together, which is you can have a deep, interesting game as well as long as you know what you're supposed to do next, then you're set.
The other thing is that the structure of our games is such that you can kind of self-pace your way through it. If something is too hard for you, you can just go back and grind a little bit, find some better items, and then try it again in a while. And that's good for the hardcore guy because he gets through it immediately and kills the boss at the lowest level in the smallest amount of time. But pretty much anybody can eventually get their way through it. And like Dave said, we designed our interface to be extremely easy. I mean, I think our early guiding principle was very simple, and that's that the left click does the obvious thing, and the right click does the next most obvious thing. And pretty much anyone could sit down and kind of get that in their heads and get their way through it. So I think our genre in particular is very friendly to players of all different skill levels. I mean, you see little kids playing sometimes, and they're like, "What are you?"
Recommend that.
Yep. It's your choice. But eventually anybody can get their way through and get through the game.
Yeah.
All right, a lot of people want to know if you can go back and change one thing about Diablo. We've spoken about this before. Yeah. What would it be?
Stamina bar.
Stamina bar.
What? Yeah.
Why don't you expand on that, Dave?
I don't know why the hell it's even in there.
Yeah.
It's just like it punishes the new player. That's all it does, right? So it's a bad idea.
I think if we're talking about Diablo 1, I would say the walk speed is just almost unplayable these days for me.
It's a long trek out to the witch.
Why we thought that was okay.
The long, long trek to right over there.
Where they didn't have anything for you.
And we probably should have had the chat gem do something.
Do
something more than it does now.
Yes.
I'll just say that. Okay.
It is working as intended.
Yes, it is.
I would, if I had known that kind of concept, I don't know if I would do it or not do it, but I always think about, I wonder if the game would have been better or worse with instanced loot. And I always think about that, about Diablo 2. Does that make it better or does it make it worse? Mainly because I played with Erich, who stole all the items.
True story. True story.
The first ninja. It's fairly minor in context, but in Diablo 2, Act 3 would Y off into one dead end way out there with no way to really get back. That was always annoying. And whenever I'm watching people play now and they're out there, I just cringe. Oh, it's a dead end. They're coming to the dead end.
Long, empty backtrack.
Well, speaking of stamina bar, how do you distinguish between a feature that is the kind of difficulty that enhances the experience versus something that is just tedious?
I don't think you do necessarily know that. I mean, you just have to play it and or get feedback. Is really the only way to do it. When you're designing something, it may seem like, oh, this is too good, so we've got to balance it. We've got to make something, you know, some kind of drawback to running around all the time. And then, you know, you make something like the stamina bar. And you're like, because it's just too fun to be running around all the time. We wouldn't want you to have fun.
Yeah.
What the hell was I thinking?
Yeah, I mean, you always want to put limitations on things. That's why you have the mana ball, just so you can't spam skills all the time, though, you know. And everything's got little limiters and balance features to them. And sometimes they work, and sometimes you get a stamina bar.
I mean, the stamina bar made some sense, if I could talk a little about the stamina bar.
In defense of the stamina bar.
Diablo 1 had the kind of interesting dynamic where you couldn't get away at times from the monsters. You'd get in too far and it would be too scary, and you'd try to, which was really cool. I loved it. And then we make Diablo 2, and it's pretty easy to just run circles around most of the monsters all the time. So the stamina bar was an attempt to get around, to get back into that kind of scary feeling of maybe I'm in too deep with the monsters. I agree it failed, though.
If there's one thing that you could add to Path of Exile, what would that be?
Oh, God. I think they're doing just fine the way they are. I mean, after looking at the trailer yesterday and all the gameplay, first of all, how courageous was that to play live on you know, in their keynote address, having no idea if it was going to blue screen, if he was going to die. But no, they're doing just fine. I don't think they need our advice at all at this point.
I would have said the shape-shifting, but that was too awesome. They covered it.
They got it.
Yeah, I really, they've gone farther and do more than we really ever did at this point, so I wouldn't add anything. No. Happy to let them take the lead on that.
Yep. A stamina bar, maybe.
What was the original inspiration for Diablo?
Well, mainly, like, I think the very first time I was working on some of the ideas, I was in high school, and I had been playing a lot of the like wizardry games and Ultima and games like that. This was like even pre-Bard's Tale and stuff. So this is a long time ago now. Yeah. And so I knew I wanted to make. I was really into Dungeons and Dragons, and I really wanted to make RPGs. That was kind of my heart and desire. And then when I went to school, I was heavily influenced by a game called Rogue, which is where the term roguelike comes from. And there are variants on that. One, the Tolkien-themed one called Moria, and then Moria and Angband, and those NetHack and things like that were big influences on me. After that, it was like, okay, this I can imagine this as being. So I played so many hours of these games that was a huge influence originally.
And you know, Dave said earlier, we make games that we want to play, and for us, it was like we see this opportunity to take these games and play them in spectacular 640 by 480 VGA color for the first time. You know,
256 colors.
It's a luxury.
So yeah, Dave had been talking about the RPGs forever, but I think that we kind of decided, hey, it's time to do this when both of us got addicted to XCOM Apocalypse. Yeah. And it was just the graphics from that and the way you'd move around these characters. We said, hey, let's take that sort of
a good viewpoint to play the dungeon crawling game.
Yeah. So we actually took a screenshot, which was not an easy thing to do back then. Took a screenshot of the XCOM. It had a little cursor box that you could move around. We took a screenshot of that, and we used that as the basis for the tile for Diablo 1, the ground tile or whatever. It was like the exact same size as the XCOM tile.
Did a little math to figure out what angle that puts the camera at,
right.
And it was 30 degrees, by the way.
There you go.
So when you guys aren't developing games, and you do find some time to play, if you do, what kind of video games or non-video games do you find yourself playing?
Oh man, I like games of any kind. I will play any game, any sport, anything like that at any time. So twice a week I still play hockey. I'm the oldest guy in the league at this point, and so that's going to end probably pretty soon. But just anything. I love board games, love just like I say, any game. And unfortunately, we don't have time to fully immerse ourselves in these games that require that you fully immerse yourselves. But we look at everything. Each give it a try, give it a few playthroughs. I mentioned before I loved playing Minecraft. Got into that for a while, and it was just calming to the mind to go out and play. But I'm just fascinated by games. Love them all.
I'm embarrassed to admit, but I'm back on World of Warcraft Classic. I'm hoping that ends soon, but I am doing it. Another thing, Max and I play Mario Kart all the time. Get a couple friends over, race around.
Yeah.
I play a lot of things. Let's see. I played Star Wars Galaxy Heroes. I have phone games. I have console games I play, and I have PC games. I play all of them. I also play a lot of board games. I've been playing, in board game department, I've been playing a lot of Gloomhaven lately. I love that game. And then in phone, I played Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes for years and years. I just recently gave it up. I'm going through a little withdrawals. I didn't know quite what to do, and so I've been playing Pokemon Go. I'm not sure why I'm doing this.
He's been playing here.
Yeah, I've been playing actually at the show, like wandering around catching Pokemon as people are trying to ask me questions. And then I've been, I brought my Switch. I was really sad that Pokemon Sword and Shield was coming out after I got on the plane, not before I got on the plane. I thought it was coming out right before, like that morning that I was getting on the plane. I was like, oh yes, it's good. Then I looked at, oh no, it's 2 more days or whatever. So right now I'm not playing anything on the Switch. But then PC wise, I play PoE. I play It Lurks Below, my latest game, a lot. I play a lot of old EverQuest. I play EverQuest EQ99 EverQuest, which is like a kind of a server that's stuck in time, kind of like classic WoW. It's my classic WoW, and I've been playing that a lot. A bunch of other things I've tried as well. My wife and I stream about 5 nights a week, and so we play a variety of things on the stream.
Pimp your channel. What
Jungle Queen is my wife's channel.
Yeah. It's a great stream. And I admit that we also play Words with Friends.
Why do you believe that many ARPGs find themselves in the medieval fantasy genre?
The best weapons. It's like dogfighter sims always go to the kind of the World War II model. It's just because it's the best stuff is there. The medieval era had so many cool swords and halberds and armor, and like these days it's just not as fun to find some sort of tactical modern helmet. I want some brass thing that's got some horns on it or something. It's the stuff that's just the coolest for me, and it's the goriest combat too. So
it also just like on the screen, the scale and scope we play with, it leads itself to the melee combat and ranged combat very easily. It's hard to justify a lot of melee combat in a science fiction genre. People try, I've tried, but it really makes more sense in this medieval.
Yeah.
And it's the best, right? I mean, that's
castles and stuff. I mean, it's just all the cool stuff.
Yeah.
While developing D1 or D2, what was the biggest scare you guys had?
Oh God. Oh,
there's a lot of them.
There's a lot of them. Which one am I going to narrow it down to? Is it the?
Yeah.
11th hour, my wife was pregnant, and we were trying to finish the game. And she called me in the hospital. Is it the loss of the repository in Diablo 2? That's probably it, right? Yeah, you can tell that one.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah,
boy.
so how long before it finished? It all blends together now.
Couple weeks.
I was going to say a month, but yeah, somewhere right,
Yeah.
right at the end. Right at the end.
Month before we're done with Diablo 2, all of a sudden our source safe at the time?
Yeah, it was
source safe backup for all our code gets corrupted.
Not just our code, but all of our assets.
all the assets, all the
art files,
music.
everything.
Irrevocably, fatally corrutted.
Corrupted.
and we
so
had
we get
no
in the
backup.
morning and we're screwed.
We had no backup.
And it's all gone. And we were supposed to have a backup, but we had neglected it classically.
Right.
And we spent a day or two just in sheer panic. So that, scare would be
Yeah.
understatement.
Absolutely.
Finally rebuilt a lot of it through what people had at their homes. I had a big chunk of it, of stuff left over that I could. So I went home, brought in my whole computer, pulled out the hard drive or whatever we did back then. And then spent a few days reconstructing it, which ended up working fine, except that we lost all the history, and we lost a lot of the assets, art assets, which we were talking about with some people the other night, maybe you, Rhykker, that we lost. It would make it very difficult for Blizzard to do a Diablo 2. What do they call it?
Remaster.
A remaster of any kind, because all the assets we used are pretty much gone. They'd have to make it from scratch in most of those cases.
Yeah. Now, some other, like I said, there were scares literally all the way through from the first day of Diablo 1 to the end.
I've got an even bigger one. Let me jump in with that.
Go for it.
Midway through Diablo.
Settle in, people, because there's a lot of scares. Right?
Midway through Diablo 1, we're a bunch of jokers. There's 10 of us, and we're barely surviving as a studio. We never paid our payroll taxes. And so we come in the morning. These are taxes we withhold from the salaries of our guys, and we're supposed to mail to the government. We never mailed it to the government. And we were pretty much out of money. So we come in one morning and there's a notice on our door that's like 3 days to pay or you're going to jail. It was rough. It was really scary. Kind of scrounged up some money, and luckily the deal that turned us into Blizzard in the long run came around right at the right time to save our butts.
Yeah, a lot of people don't realize we were an indie company when we started making Diablo. We were not yet Blizzard. We were Condor Incorporated, and totally flat broke. And we signed to make Diablo for $300,000, which was woefully insufficient for the task. So we were always completely out of money. And honestly, we look back and laugh at it, but that was super stressful. And it's really hard when you're an indie company to just pay the bills at all to make a game. And so we got really lucky a lot, several times along the way. And when Blizzard finally said, "Hey, we want to acquire you guys. That looks, we're happy with this game thus far," that was a big relief. And everything after that seems kind of like it was just fun. Even though there were scary things. But yeah, those were heady times. It could easily have gone bad before we ever became part of Blizzard.
Yep.
Yeah. We wandered around the convention with our Diablo pitch document, which is hilarious. It's basically just a wall of text with a couple of little diagrams, looking for someone to give us money or even hear us out, and nobody did, except for the guys at Blizzard. Yeah. So that was pretty cool. That was
Diablo rejected about 20 times before.
Yeah.
And they're kicking themselves now. What advice would you have for smaller game studios on how to keep the passion and the fire alive as they grow into something closer to a corporation?
Oh, God.
Run away, abort. Yeah. No, it's actually a lot easier today because of the availability of game engines and things like that. Can give you a head start and get you going. But honestly, the biggest advice is do your thing, Don't listen to the haters. Don't doubt yourself. It's going to be a ton of work. It's going to be 10 times more work than you think it is. But just put your head down and grind through it and do something new and cool. Don't try to chase what anyone else has done.
I mean, I think that different people create video games and video game companies for different reasons. And sometimes it shows, sometimes it doesn't. But, a lot of people, if they want to make a corporation out of it, like that is the goal of what they're trying to do. They're making a video game company to make money and be a business. And so if you want to avoid that, the easiest way to avoid that is to not want that. And so focusing on what you're doing and having passion for and belief in what you're making will make all the difference. If your goal is to try and keep that fire alive, don't become a giant corporation and try and do too much. Focus on doing what you do well.
I mean, ultimately, we're all in the gaming business, and you're all here because we love games. And the process of making them is really just like putting into the universe what you want to exist in the universe. And that's really a life lesson. It's not just a business lesson. It's like make what you want the world to be like, and don't compromise on it. But it's going to be hard. This is a hard business. Yeah. That's why we're the oldest people here.
I'm 27 years old.
Yeah. Look what it's done to him.
Well, a lighter question. What are your favorite Easter eggs from, I guess, any game you've played or made?
My favorite Easter egg was the very first one, which was that I know of, which is the one from the Atari 2600 adventure game, where you would take this little bridge. I'm really dating myself here, but it was, you played a cube, and you went around a maze, and there was like a bridge. You put it on, and you picked up this dot, and you went back through, and you put the dot over this line. You then could walk through this wall, and you could see the credits for the people that made it, because Atari wouldn't allow people to become famous when they were making the video games. They didn't want to give any of the designers or creators or anything any kind of notoriety, because it would drive up the costs of the people. They could get jobs and stuff, so they didn't allow the programmers to put credits in their games. So they did this little Easter egg that put in their credits or whatever, and then so everybody remembers that Easter egg that played the 2600s. That was a long time. That was in the late 70s. So that was.
It's not a good answer. I almost have a mental block. I don't recognize an Easter egg when I see it. I don't know if I ever find them. And I don't think to make them even. When
we were making Torchlight, we put a few little Easter eggs from other games into our game. So we had the head crab, we had the claptrap robot, and we also did a Minecraft dungeon. And the funny thing there was, when we were reaching out to these companies to get permission to put their things in our game, they were generally enthusiastic about it, but they would send over a document about that thick that stipulated all of the legal aspects of it, which was fine, whatever. And with the exception of Minecraft, this was before Notch went crazy and everything. But we wrote him an email just saying, "Hey, is it cool if we do a Minecraft level?" And he just wrote back. It was 2 words. It was "hell yes," and that was it. That was our contract. So that was pretty cool.
To your knowledge, are there any Easter eggs that you've put in your games that people haven't found yet?
Yes. It would ruin the experience to say it, though. Yeah.
I don't know if anybody ever figured out what the gem does.
The chat gem. Yeah. Yeah. Perfect gem. Yeah. It perfectly activated sometimes, but Yeah. Obviously, we can't answer what the unfound Easter eggs are. Come on.
What are you most excited about for the future of gaming as a whole?
More games.
Yeah. No, I mean, the technology still changes so rapidly, and every time it does, it opens up a new just whole window of opportunities that you can do with it. And I think that one of the reasons we're here today is because we took advantage of one of those opportunities. Is now we could put things on screen in full, 640 by 480 splendor that were from our imaginations. And I think that every time there's a big technological advancement, there is that opportunity again. And so since we are not really tech people, we just wait for these things to happen and then jump on it. It's kind of a matter of just seeing what comes next and what it allows us to do.
Yeah, I mean, I think that advent of ray tracing, I think is going to be really cool. I think there's going to be some really neat things that you can do and some really cool visuals that you can create. So I think that I'm looking forward to that. As well as I just think that in general, there's, as phones become more powerful, having gaming systems with you at all times is really kind of interesting, and I enjoy that a lot. So I feel like there's a lot of room for improvement in mobile phones games, not just because they're all the free to play and there's all of that's its own issue, but I'm saying the actual content is going to get better and better.
Yeah, and over time we just get better at doing this. We're still making aRPGs after all this time, and to some extent, when you make a game like this, and I'm sure you've had the same experience with It Lurks Below, but it kind of takes on a life of its own, and you just have this bucking bronco that you're trying to tame and pull into shape and get to work like you want it to. And I think we're still doing that. I think we're still getting control of the beasts that we create. And getting the pacing right, and getting the experience to where we really want it. And honestly, we're all very self-critical about the games we make, but I feel like we're halfway there, So even if nothing technological comes along, just getting better at controlling the beasts that we create is gonna keep us going until we can't do this anymore.
All right, well, we have a couple minutes left. Would you like to talk a bit about your current projects?
Sure. Currently, I'm working on a project called It Lurks Below. It's out on Steam. It's $20. And I did everything up until recently. My wife is now helping a little bit. But I did all of the art and the programming and the music and sound effects and everything, so kind of a one-person show, and it's kind of like Diablo and Terraria had a baby, so it's kind of a side perspective, Terraria-like looking kind of graphics, pixel art, and but then random monsters, random levels, random items. Rune words, unique items, all sorts of stuff. 8 different character classes. Anyway, lots of. And then I recently did a big update in October that allowed for multi-classing and shared towns, so you can transfer items between your different characters and all sorts of stuff. So I'm having a lot of fun doing that. That's what I've been working on. Oh, and then just 2 days ago, I announced that it's coming to Xbox.
Right, and I've got a studio called Ectra Games in San Francisco, and we're making the next Torchlight game called Torchlight Frontiers. And thanks. And it's been a ton of fun, and we're learning a ton, and we've been a little bit quiet about things over the last couple months. There's a lot of big news coming up that I can't really break. I can break one thing here tonight, and that's that we're not likely to make our 2019 release date. Right? So I think that everyone pretty much knew that already, but I'll just make it official here and now, so you guys got that news right here and now. But a lot of really cool things coming along with that, and I think you guys are really going to like that too. It's completely different than Path of Exile, and yet exactly the same, so in the best ways.
So about 5 years ago, my friend Travis Baldry and I just broke off from making big games to do a little studio like David has here. So we made Double Damage Games, where we made the game Rebel Galaxy, and then just about 3 months ago, we made the sequel to that called Rebel Galaxy Outlaw. And we're kind of iterating on that right now, getting it out on the consoles and getting a mod kit available for that. So that's what we're doing. Keeping it simple, but it's a good life.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Any final thoughts you'd like to share?
Yeah, I'm going to say that this crowd is awesome. You guys, I've met so many of you. I can recognize faces in here today. Everybody's so nice, and New Zealand's such a nice place to be. And a big thanks to Chris and Jonathan and Eric for having us out here. It's really cool, and those guys are just become really good friends and loving it here.
Yeah, absolutely.
Huge thank you to those guys, man. It really does feel like we're with family here, and it's great. I hope they do this again. I think this was probably a success, right? I can't wait to when we get off stage. I'm going right out and grinding maps in the card game. But the whole thing has been so fun. I really can't wait to get. And thank you all for making it fun.
Okay. Yeah, so I also want to, I'm just going to echo exactly the same things here, but yeah, thanks to Grinding Gear Games for having us out here. It was super generous and unexpected, and it just goes to show you kind of the character of those people. They're just wonderful. They're great friends, and they're just great human beings, and they really love Diablo 2, and it's really awesome to be included in something like this. And thanks to all the fans and all the people here, it makes our job really fun.
Yep. Yeah.
All right, we're going to thank you all for attending, for watching, for sending in questions. We're going to thank David Brevik, Max Schaefer, Erich Schaefer for joining us.
And Rhykker.
Yes, yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. I think that's our time.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.